because with a rapidly ageing population, they know they have to if they want any guarantee of a vaguely comfortable and dignified retirement. What many of them didn't know and have discovered to their cost is just how little protection their money has in some parts of the investment community. Australian banks are amongst the most tightly regulated in the world. Managed investment schemes attracting many billions of dollars of ordinary people's savings are not. One estimate puts the money lost through these schemes in the past 5 years at up to $15 billion. That's billion. Tonight's program will shock you at the ways a person's hard-earned savings can be legally lost. The story will also ask if governments are failing in their duty to provide adequate regulatory protection. This investigation has been conducted by the ABC's economics reporter, Stephen Long.
At a modest home south of Newcastle, Brian Claxton is getting ready for a day's work. At this stage of life, he was looking forward to carefree days after many decades of labour.
It was hard. I was bringing up a family, a wife and 2 children at that stage, and so actually accumulating funds to provide for your retirement was relatively difficult, and it was something that you were proud to achieve. That if you could see your little nest egg starting to build up towards retirement, it was beautiful.
But the nest egg's been shattered. $250,000 gone on a dud investment.
Devastating. Devastating. I mean, no one has $250,000 just hanging around or couldn't do with it. So for me personally, it's destroyed the plans for myself and my wife to comfortably retire.
Plans to travel overseas and take a fishing tour of Australia are no more. Instead, Brian's been forced back to work, mowing lawns for a living.
It's getting very close to the end now. I'm 71 now. My health is not the best. I have a heart problem. Yeah, when we have this hot summer weather, I don't think it's something that I'll be able to keep up much longer.
He's one of tens of thousands of Australians who've lost their money in mortgage funds, debentures and similar schemes. Big money.
The estimate is easily between 10 to 15 billion since the GFC. That's my estimate. It might even be higher than that. The reality is that ordinary Australians have lost their money in these managed investment schemes. So the law is not good law. I don't know why the law has not changed. Maybe it's not in the interests of the chosen few. I don't know.
Brian Claxton put his hard-earned savings into Prime Trust, a property trust specialising in retirement villages. He's furious about the way his money disappeared.
These people don't have morals, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, how could you do this to people?
It's a story that leaves you wondering, how was this allowed to happen?
It just gets you all the time thinking what these people have done to us. And by that I mean the likes of Bill Lewski and his cohorts. And that it's just stripped everyone's pride away as well as their money. And that they've left us very little to live for and go on for.
Bill Lewski is the founder of Prime Trust. He made a fortune from the venture before it was placed in liquidation 16 months ago, taking with it the funds of Brian Claxton and nearly 10,000 others, $550 million in total.
How much money went out to Bill Lewski and entities controlled by Bill Lewski?
About $140 million, I think.
Bill Lewski enjoys a vista of Port Phillip Bay and the Melbourne skyline from an impressive beachside home. But you won't find his name on the deeds.
He lives in a house at 212 The Esplanade, Brighton, Victoria, which is owned by 212 The Esplanade Proprietary Limited, a Lusky family trust, which allows him to live in that home rent-free and picks up all the property costs associated with that place.
The Lusky family assets are extensive. Apartments near the Brighton shore, a luxury holiday home opening onto the Gold Coast sand that Bill Lusky bought for $4.6 million last August. Yet Bill Lusky says he doesn't have a cent to his name.
Lusky has set up a very large number of family trusts which hold the family assets. He has said on oath that he has nothing, but he has the benefit of the discretion of the controllers of his family trusts. The family trusts have a discretion to use the money that he has in these family trusts for the benefit of members of the family.
82-year-old Don Steele was a founder of the Prime Trust Action Group. He lost $130,000 in Prime Trust, his partner Patty about the same. Don spent his working life as an actuary, assessing financial risk and uncertainty. With an ageing population boosting demand for retirement living, Prime Trust seemed like a sound investment.
I studied the product disclosure statement, dated the 30th of August 2005, and I thought this looks good. So I made an investment at that time. Michael Wooldridge, the former Minister for Health in the Howard government, was the chairman of Prime Trust from, I think, 2005, and he lent the trust credibility.
But there was no way Don Steele or other investors could foresee a key risk. Decisions that allowed tens of millions of dollars to flow from the trust to Bill Lusky through companies he controlled.
Two of the main lots of money that went out of the company, one was in relation to a listing fee that was paid to interests of Lusky, and another one was in relation to the management rights, which also money went to interests of Lusky, and those two amounts between them total $100 million. If that $100 million would still be available in this entity, I'm sure it would have been able to continue to this day.
After Prime Trust listed on the stock exchange in 2007, another company controlled by Bill Lusky was paid nearly $33 million as a fee for the stock exchange listing.
At first I couldn't believe it. I was sure there had been a typographical error. I thought these listing fees must have been $32,943, not $32,943,000. I couldn't believe it. But I studied the document and found that it was true, that $33 million had been paid by way of listing fees. So naturally, I had to go and then find out, how did this happen? This document tells a very important story.
Don Steele discovered the directors had changed the constitution of the trust to allow the payment.
They're massive.
There was no consultation with the investors. No consultation whatever about this very important change to the constitution.
Don Steele complained to the corporate watchdog, the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, or ASIC, but he was rebuffed.
I've got this letter here from the chairman of ASIC in which he claims that the responsible entity was entitled to change the constitution of the trust because the change did not affect the rights of the members. Despite the fact that they took $33 million of our money, it didn't affect the rights of the members.
That was the former chairman, Tony D'Aloisio?
That was the chairman of ASIC, Tony D'Aloisio.
It seems to many people...
Under a new chairman, ASIC is seeking to have the directors fined and banned from running companies. He was unaware of the letter.
If ASIC had acted in 2009, 2010, then Prime Trust may not be in liquidation and investors might not have lost all their money.
Look, I can't comment on what may have been. The most important thing is that we have taken action now.
Bill Lewski's business interests extend all the way to the silver screen. He was executive producer of this Hitchcockian thriller released in 1999.
Now that's scary. Yeah, you've been watching too many films.
Who was mysteriously murdered in Cambodia the year before its release.
Mr. Green was found dead in a hotel room in Phnom Penh on March 24, his face battered beyond recognition.
Green was a fraudster who swindled $42 million from Melbourne's business elite, siphoning money from a tax minimisation scheme out of the trust fund and into offshore bank accounts. At the time, Bill Lewski was Green's business partner and a director of companies involved in the scam. He claimed in court that he had no knowledge it was a fraud and he was never charged. Max Green's brother Phil ran the investment bank Babcock & Brown, which collapsed spectacularly in 2009. But 2 years before it went under, Bill Lewski pulled off a lucrative deal. He sold the management rights for Prime Trust's retirement villages to Babcock & Brown Communities, a subsidiary of the investment bank. Lewski, through one of his companies, was paid $60 million for the management rights, yet he gained them for nothing.
What do you think of the decision to allow Bill Lewski to acquire the management rights for nothing and sell them for $60 million?
Yes, well, that decision is a disgrace. The directors just failed in their duty in relation to that matter.
Bill Lewski's lawyer told us that it was all legal, the fees were legitimate, and it was all disclosed. Prime Trust's liquidator, Sterling Horn, has been winding up companies for decades.
He's going to run next Saturday.
He is.
Saturday week, isn't
He's part owner of some fine racehorses, and he's been a professional gambler, but he knows he's not on a winner here. The money was long ago channeled through family trusts, with the $60 million from the Babcock & Brown deal gifted to two of Bill Lewski's sons.
What are the odds of the investors, the retirees, getting their money back in Prime Trust?
Yes, the odds are 1,000,000 to 1.
Kyabram, 200 k's north of Melbourne, where there's a different pace to life. It's Sunday morning, and the residents are counting their blessings. At the Baptist Church, their faith is resolute, but their trust has been shaken by the collapse 4 months ago of Banksia Securities, a lender based in Kyabram with 16,000 investors in rural Victoria and beyond. Banksia Securities had branches, took deposits, gave withdrawals and functioned just like a bank. But it wasn't a bank. It was a lightly regulated debenture fund with no deposit protection.
In his arrogance, the wicked man hunts down the weak who are caught in the scheme he devises. He boasts...
The church had $130,000 with Banksia, most of it from the collection plate. Many parishioners had also put in their life savings.
I guess we had 98% of our money was invested in Banksia.
The part that hurt me most of all was the fact that it was money that was left to me from my parents after they passed away, so it was my inheritance.
Well, my mother turns 101 on Saturday, and she had probably a quarter of her investments in Banksia. I'm concerned for a lot of the people who are up at, such as in Warramunda Hostel. They were just traumatised.
Well, it means I've got to live.
Some people blamed Banksia investors for chasing big returns. Not so.
People invested locally in Banksia because it was investing back into the community. The interest rates that were given were just a fraction more than the banks. It wasn't a matter of greed, it's a matter of country people looking after country people.
Yeah, I'm sure that's why we did, Stephen. It's always been a part of Kyabram. It was an institution that was in Kyabram that operated like a bank.
Oh dear. Well, I just thought it was a bank, like somewhere just to keep your money.
We went to Kyabram and many people said to us, we saw it as a bank. It operated like a bank. We thought of it as a bank or a building society.
And its name, Banksia, probably implies some form of strength that simply is not there. Look, the reality is this sector, which takes deposits from individuals and pays interest rate on them, they're not banks. They are mortgage funds. They take money from the public, they all lend it. They're operating in a zone which is slightly riskier than a bank, and there's many good reasons to why this sector exists as it does, but the problem is that they are not regulated by APRA. They don't have the same capital requirements, and so when there is a continued economic downturn, these sorts of businesses come under increased pressure.
Banksia Securities failed to meet the minimum benchmarks for capital set by ASIC, but the watchdog could do nothing other than make sure this was disclosed in a document few people would read. Aaron Bramley's 7, and he loves his cars.
See how many laps you can do. Staying on the track.
Born premature, he's developmentally delayed with autistic spectrum behaviours. It's tough for his mum without her husband, Aaron's father.
Mark was a truck driver. He carted export beef from Narrandera to the docks in Melbourne. And one Tuesday morning he came home from Melbourne, was home for a few hours and then left in the afternoon. And his boss called me about 2 o'clock in the afternoon and said that there's been a bad accident and that he was sorry. That's all I knew. He didn't say that he died. And so I didn't know until 7:30 that night when the police come knocking on the door that my husband died. So that was a difficult day.
Kim and Aaron Bramley got compensation from WorkCover.
I received $267,000 and my son received $60,000. So through the aid of a financial advisor at Morrison and Soares, we placed our money into the Cherry Fund Limited.
Cherry Fund is a spin-off from Banksia Securities, and the financial planning firm that advised Kim Bramley was linked to the law practice that set up Banksia. Kim was getting $25,000 a year in interest from the investment. The money's been frozen since November.
How significant has this loss of the investment money been?
Hard. Very hard.
Bye, guys.
Oh, very good.
Thankfully, Kim's in-laws, Annette and Max, who also had money with Banksia, are there to lend a hand because Kim has to work almost full-time now, leaving less time for Aaron's many special needs.
His further education is what we worry about because we're not too sure what's ahead of him when he finishes perhaps in
the special school, and he may get involved into a mainstream school, which we hope he will.
You're concerned that he might have to go to a school outside of the public sector that would cost money because of his special needs. Yeah.
Yes. So we'll just have to wait and see.
The whole 8A, G. Ryan.
It's Veterans Day at the golf club.
Tom McDonald.
There are 420 members, most retirees, most with Banksia. But typical of the town, you won't hear too many complaining.
It's a very resilient town and a very strong town, Kyabram.
The golf club's run entirely by volunteers.
How many sandwiches are you making, Mark?
125.
125. So they wouldn't miss one or two?
Yes, they just might.
It had $50,000 invested with Banksia Securities, earmarked to fix the leaky roof, but it's vowed not to put up its very modest fees.
Banksia sponsored our Par 3 championships over the last couple of years, 3 years. Very good sponsorship. A lot of our members in turn had deposits with Banksia.
But its business conduct was below par. The receivers say Banksia Securities was probably trading insolvent. Banksia Securities also made an unexplained loan to the parent company for $11 million.
On its face, from what I've seen to date, it will be difficult to get that loan repaid in full, and we might ultimately need to go through enforcement action.
Assets were significantly overvalued. Yet the auditor signed off on Banksia's accounts 4 weeks before the receivers were called in.
These are key issues for us to look at it, bringing claims against the auditors or directors.
The news isn't all bad. Investors look as if they'll get 60, maybe 65 cents in the dollar back. But for most, more than a third of their retirement savings is too much to lose.
It's a global problem, shadow banking. And frankly, my view is that if it acts like a bank, it looks like a bank. If investors think it's a bank, then it probably should be regulated like a bank.
Under the law, the regulators can't even make sure that mortgage funds and trusts have enough money to back their lending. They can't stop them lending money to their owners or related companies. They can't stop the conflicts of interest that riddle the sector. As for criminal charges, well, they're extremely rare. The only thing ASIC can really do is make sure the risks are set out on paper. They call it disclosure. But it's almost become a case of, so long as you disclose, anything goes. 1,000 miles north of Kyabram, Queensland's Gold Coast. It's one of Australia's retirement hotspots, and it's been the mortgage fund capital of Australia. Now it's the epicentre of mortgage fund failure. MFS, City Pacific, Equity Trust. But some fund managers are forging on.
Offering a global pathway to these burgeoning Australian investment opportunities is LM Investment Management Limited, an Australian...
With the celebrity gardener Jamie Dury as its chief spruiker, LM is expanding worldwide. But back home, some of its clients aren't doing so well. Danny Marr is a financial planner from Cairns.
So you're pretty much involved in a salvage operation on behalf...
He's trying to salvage the lives of people, convinced by an advisor to put their money in a fund run by LM Investments.
How much has been lost in these mortgage trusts up here?
Oh, look, it's hard to quantify. I know of one trust, the LM First Mortgage Income Fund, that there's about $20 million worth of exposure here in the Cairns and Far North Queensland area.
20 million in this area, that is huge.
Well, it's quite a sizable fund, and you know, some of these people, it's unfortunately they're mainly retirees and it's their livelihood, it's their lost life savings.
We drove north from Cairns to meet one of those people. He's a retired cane cutter, the son of Italian immigrants, and he's lived for 45 years high up in the hills between Cairns and Mossman. His name is Sam Leonardi.
How you going, Dan? G'day, Sam. How are you? That's mate. That's the way. Yep, out in the good country now, mate. We are. Out in the good country.
Sam, good to meet you.
Pleased to meet you.
Stephen Long.
Pleased to meet you, Stephen. That's good, mate. Yeah.
Beautiful place you've got up here.
Oh, yeah. It's lovely. It's a bit of paradise here.
It really is.
Never gets hot here, mate. That's why I hate...
Sam left school early and had a working life of hard physical labour.
Well, I started cutting cane in 1949. I was 16. I worked 7 days a week up until 20 years ago. 7 days a week, 20 years ago. And I've never had a holiday or double time paid in my life, in my whole life.
How do you feel about what's happened with your money?
I'm happy that I'm 80, that I won't be around in 4, 5 or 6, 8 years' time to what's going to happen to this country. I'm happy that I'm getting out the hell out of it. But I feel sorry for the young people because there's no more justice. You know, what can you do, you know?
Sam Leonardi put $210,000, most of his retirement savings, into the LM First Mortgage Income Fund, on the advice of a financial planner who was enthusiastically marketing the scheme.
It was safe as a bank, I thought.
Not as safe as a bank at all. Like most mortgage funds, it was lending when banks wouldn't lend. When the GFC hit, the risks were exposed. Nearly all of the mortgages in the fund are in default. Sam's going to lose at least 41 cents of every dollar he invested.
A bloke that had no education and went to school and knocked off school at 15 and cut cane in when I was 16. I made the money and then I give it to people that's got the brains and education to double it so I can get my share and they can get their share and they go and lose it. How do you work that out? It was a rundown dairy farm.
Okay.
Sam's had hardly any income for 4 years. He can't get his money out of the fund, but he can't get a pension either because the investment still counts as an asset.
So were you running cattle?
He needs a knee replacement, but he's had to put it on hold and live with the pain.
Cane farming and cattle, no wonder you've got a knee problem.
No, it was an injury through a fight.
Through a fight?
Through a fight about 25 years ago. After the fight, I was crippled. I could hardly walk back to my house.
What kind of fight?
Fist fight in town. Yeah, my bloody help, mate.
Biffo in town?
Yeah.
Just in really general.
Danny Marr is dismayed by the financial advice that convinced Sam to bet his retirement savings on this risky investment.
It sickens me to the core because this is my profession. This is the profession that I signed up to help people with their retirement, to help them, to live a successful life. If an accountant makes a mistake in a tax return, yeah, it hurts, but you get over it. If a financial planner is incompetent, it has the potential to completely devastate the rest of your life.
But while Sam's got food on the table and a guitar in his hand, you figure he might just get by.
All the hobos are all heading northwards, 'cause summertime nearly is done. So just like the rich and the wealthy, we'll travel around with the sun. I'll be in the north for the winter, up in the sunshine again. And it's no use you talking to me about walking, 'cause I'm going to travel by train.
LM Investments owner and chief executive Peter Drake has done well out of the fund's management business. His beachfront mansion on the Gold Coast straddles 4 blocks of land, with a purpose-built skateboard park for the kids. Despite problems with some funds, LM can still boast of managing $3 billion in realisable assets. We were hoping Peter Drake would tell us the secrets of his success.
Stephen Long from Four Corners. We're doing a story and we're interested in doing an interview with you about LM.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, can we arrange that?
Yeah.
You in town today or?
No, I'm actually going to Brisbane and New Zealand.
Okay.
Back tomorrow.
Back tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Give me a call.
Terrific.
We never did get that interview. One of the questions we wanted to put was, why didn't LM Investment cut its losses earlier and wind up the fund that Sam Leonardi had his money in?
Okay. I wrote to LM and expressed to them that I felt that in the interest of protecting the interests of unit holders in the fund and the remaining funds in the fund, that the fund should be wound up. And we was flatly told, no, that's not the case. We know what we're doing. The whole time, everything was spin, and we're going to reopen the fund. We're going to have new money coming in. There's financial planners waiting to put money in, but none of that came to reality.
The one that we'll wind up.
Peter Drake argued plausibly off camera that LM did the right thing by delaying the wind-up of the fund, saying it avoided a fire sale of assets. But it also had an incentive to keep the fund running because of the fees it made for the parent company.
Terrific. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Stephen, is it?
Yes.
That fund accounted for more than 50% of LM administration's fees. If you looked at the size of the other LM funds at the time, they were tiny. This thing was their flagship. This was their primary source of income.
The market for mortgage funds in Australia is now all but dead. LM concedes it can't get new business here. So now it's selling its funds entirely to investors offshore, with some curious claims.
We pay ourselves last, the management fee.
This video appears on Peter Drake's website.
You're going to hear me waxing lyrical a little bit about the Australian economy. We're in fact both British. So.
It shows Simon Bottle, an ex-Goldman Sachs employee, who is now LM Investment's European Development Manager based in London. He was speaking to financial planners and investors in Israel, and this is what he told them about LM Investments.
We're highly regulated in Australia, so we're regulated twice. We're regulated as a private bank and we're regulated as a fund manager.
Well, clearly he doesn't know what he's talking about, or he's plainly told a lie. LM's not regulated as a bank.
Integrates in the local jurisdiction.
Simon Bottle repeats the claim on his CV, saying LM Investment operates in Australia as a conservative and highly rated private bank. In the past, LM has sold its managed performance fund in similar terms, as a bank-like facility.
LM Investments, in its literature, describes its funds, or some of its funds, as bank-like. What do you think of that?
I think that that is quite interesting. I hadn't heard that, and thank you for the information.
LM Investments has told financial planners offshore that it is doubly regulated, first as a fund manager, secondly as a bank. What do you think of that?
That is something that I wasn't aware of, and it's something that we will have a closer look at.
This block of land is the new big thing for LM Investments.
Hi, I'm Jamie Jury, and this is Madison Estate, a residential community masterpiece now taking shape on the beautiful Gold Coast.
Madison Estate is at Pimpama, about 20 k's from the coast. It's the flagship for LM's Managed Performance Fund, and LM has grand plans for the land.
With 6 world-class sports parks, including the Sam Riley Swimming and Leisure Centre, the Natalie Cook Sandstorm Beach Volleyball Facility, and the world's first continuous wave surf park designed by 11-time world champion pro surfer Kelly Slater.
LM Investments reckons that when it's all built and sold, Madison Estate will be worth $1 billion to $1.5 billion. But it could be a long time coming.
The market currently is trading at 35% of the 10-year average in terms of volumes of land sales across the Gold Coast.
Andrew Rubicek is a Brisbane-based Gold Coast specialist with Colliers International. He says there were 800 land sales on the entire Gold Coast over the past year. There are 800 lots on Madison alone.
From my experience, it is unusual for a single development to attract a market share or to achieve a market share greater than 8 to 9%. I mean, 10% would be outstanding. So if you're a developer in the market at the moment in these conditions to achieve a sales volume of, 60 sales per annum would be a very good result.
Madison Estate was purchased for $89 million at the top of the market. Work's just begun, but before a sod was turned, the borrowing stood at $250 million. There's a small first mortgage to Suncorp and a very large second mortgage in the name of companies controlled by Peter Drake. That second mortgage makes up 62.5% of the assets in the LM Managed Performance Fund. It's been growing as unpaid interest is added to the debt and now stands at more than $240 million.
If I was an investor in that fund, I would have concerns as to so much of my investment being exposed to one asset when the fund is marketed as a multi-asset fund. I'd also have major concerns where my income's being derived when that estate, Madison Estate, is very much in its infancy.
But investors keep piling in, despite the fees. A management fee of 5% a year, with an option to raise it to 10%. A financial planner's fee of 4.4% in the first year. Then a 3.3% ongoing trailing commission. Annual fees of between 8 and 14%. The fund is paying investors a reasonable return, about 8% a year, but with no land yet sold at Madison, where's the money coming from?
I don't know. All I can determine is that there's money coming into the fund from new investors, and the loan from LM Managed Performance Fund to Madison is continuing to grow. So I think interest is being capitalised, and I think funds coming in from new investors are being used to pay distributions.
LM has successfully lent...
LM Investments has confirmed to Four Corners that income from new investors in the Managed Performance Fund is being used to pay returns to existing investors, though it says these payments are also being funded by cash and income from other assets in the fund.
Relax in Madison Village.
If the Gold Coast economy booms, Madison could be a winner, but it's not without risk.
Welcome home.
When investments do turn bad, there can be more at stake than money.
No go.
South of Perth, near Mandurah, is a beach that's very special for this family. It was the favourite spot in the world for Richard Hall, husband to Jan, father to Sarah.
His ideal day would be going to the beach early, getting up really early on a clear day. He'd have his fishing gear ready from the night before, and he'd wander down to the fishing spot. You'd be having fish for lunch or fish for dinner. That was his ideal. That would be a perfect day for him. Hey girls, let's go find the Granddad's Rock.
Richard was a great guy. He'd go and open the door and, to let the flies out and brush the flies out and things like that. He wouldn't hurt a single solitary person or upset them.
He'd thought of it and he would certainly go at great lengths, ridiculous lengths sometimes, as I often thought, to try and save money. From when he started working, he was planning his retirement. She was so tiny, but he was proud as punch.
Sarah's father worked hard, saved hard, and retired with his wife Jan to a home he built near his beloved beach. Then the global financial crisis hit.
I could say he was obsessed with money. He really was. And if anything went down, it was more or less the end of the world for Richard.
Richard Hall thought he'd secured the family's future. He'd built a diverse share portfolio. He also had money with LM Investments and Bill Lewski's Prime Trust. He became depressed as just about all his investments lost money, but he took the failure of Prime Trust especially hard.
I think it had a huge impact on him. It was the manner of which the value had gone down. We couldn't blame it just purely on the GFC. The conduct of Prime Trust, it made him sick, he said. I remember him saying, this whole situation makes me feel sick. It makes me rot in the guts. It's, you know, it's lower than a snake's belly, he would say.
Richard Hall began to obsess about Prime Trust and the way he felt he'd been ripped off and wronged.
My father used to write lots of things down, and a lot of the, just in his thoughts, and Bill Lusky's name was in there under, why is this happening to me? If this Bill Lusky only knew what he had done to me, or how he had affected my life, or my family's life, or my future.
I moved out because of his anger over this Prime Trust or whatever it was. And I moved out to live up the road. I rented up the road for a while because I just couldn't take the anger and his attitude, you know, his anger. But, I mean, we were still friends. We went out together. We did this, we did that. But I just couldn't live it because he just was so obsessed with money.
It got to the stage where the Halls had to sell their retirement home near the beach. That was too much for Richard.
One of the neighbours had noticed that a light was left on, which was very uncharacteristic for my father, and just went round just to see he was okay. He had hung himself. I think he decided he wasn't ever going to leave the house.
I blame myself for moving out, but I can't blame myself for his shares going down. So, you know, that's it.
Natural disasters that plague Australia every summer lead the news bulletins.
The Country Fire Authority has lifted an emergency warning for Wallan, north of Melbourne, where a grass fire was threatening homes. The 40-hectare...
But disastrous investments that have taken away the savings and the dignity of many have passed by all too quietly.
Bushfire near Ballarat.
If you were driving a fast car through any city doing 150k, you would be immediately stopped by the police. And there's not a police force in Australia that would let that driver drive that car in the morning. Why is it different when you come to managed investment schemes where people have lost billions of dollars and yet these directors can walk away unscathed and some of them go round the corner and start their own shop again? It has got to be wrong.
We have elderly citizens who have lost their life savings, who are living in penury. Citizens who have no chance of ever replacing their savings that have been lost. There is no empathy for them. They can just wait as long as it takes.
If you and I were to go and take $10,000 from a person, we would end up in jail. What happens when these corporate cowboys come along? They take $100 million, or in this case, $500 million, and we're left with nothing. And what is the result from ASIC? Nothing.
Australia freed up the financial system that encouraged people to take responsibility for their own retirement, assuming that as long as the risks were disclosed, all would be fine. Now there's talk of law reform at the margins, but it's all too late for some.
The Australian Securities and Investments Commission has recently recommended tougher federal laws to overhaul managed investment schemes to be phased in over 4 years. The government is consulting on ASIC's proposals until mid-year, but there seems no chance the laws will be changed before the next election, and after the election, who knows. Next week on Four Corners, the explosive corruption inquiry and the Labor Party power broker